Pinatel and classmates. Today is another day that we're going to embark with an interesting event in history as we step 400 years back in time, and this is what we call the 30 Years' War. So the reporters are me, yours truly, and Mr. Ligaspina, Billy Ray. Okay. Wala rin siya move. Tahawan yung move. Ano siya move? Okay. So let's start from the very basics about the 30 Years' War. When and where did it happen? So, the 30 Years' War is a 17th century religious conflict. So, when did it happen? It happened in 1618 to 1648. That makes it 30 years. So, the 30 Years' War was considered as the last major war of Protestant Reformation. And to have a little background about this Reformation, allow me to give you a brief preview. So here it is, the Protestant Reformation. So the Protestant Reformation is a 16th century religious reformation, and usa sa mga leading figures ani kay kailan mo si Martin Luther. So Martin Luther was a German priest. He was known for nailing 95 theses sa Catholic sa door sa Catholic Church. And what he did was he questioned the church and he disagreed on some of its practices, especially nga he believed that the Catholic Church was abusing its powers. And usa sa mga bad practices ani sa Catholic Church during that time was selling indulgences. This is a practice of purchasing forgiveness of sins through giving money sa church, which was kanang obviously a corrupt practice. And now Martin Luther believed that the church needed to revise the church doctrines and should adhere instead sa Bible as a teaching sa Bible. And also sa mga actions niya, the way that he challenged the church was he believed that they sole spiritual authority kay ang Bible and instead sa Pope. So, mo na. As a result, in 1555, all powers in the Holy Roman Empire, all political leaders baron, like mga emperors and princes, they got together at Augsburg and they established a treaty that allows coexistence between the Catholics and the Lutherans. So, kaning a treaty, each individual prince can choose the religion of his area. So, technically, they had the choice back then kung ang prince or ang leader ang kanang leader sa imong territory kay when he wanted to be a Catholic, he can be Catholic, and when he wanted to be a Lutheran, he can also be Lutheran. And they also established this principle, as you can see, as you can read from this slide, chaos regio, eos religio, which which can be translated as whoever reigns, their religion. Okay, moving on. Okay, so the 30 Years' War is divided into four phases. This is the Bohemian phase, Danish, Swedish, and French. The first two phases, Bohemian and Danish, were considered as a local and religious conflict. And as time goes by, it increasingly expanded to continental and political conflict. And that happened in the Swedish and French phase. So let's start with Bohemian phase. Bohemian phase started in 1618 to 1625. Sa Bohemia, majority or you can say nga tanan nga people sa Bohemia kay mga Protestants and they had a Catholic ruler. So what do you expect kung naa kay Protestant majority and you have a Catholic ruler? Of course, there will be like disagreements over religion. So what they did was the Habsburgs ruler granted and issued a letter of majesty, which is a religious toleration wherein the Protestants can, they have the freedom to practice their religion. It was not until this man over here, Ferdinand II, he became the Holy Roman Emperor and the King of Bohemia as well. And a little trivia, can you see Ferdinand II kay? He was a devout Catholic John. And one of his first actions upon stepping on the throne, or probably his first mistake, was that he forced citizens of the empire to adhere to Roman Catholicism. He wanted to impose Roman Catholic absolutism sa iyang Protestant domains. And he also wanted to suppress Protestantism. Of course, he will get violent reactions judged from his domains, which are mostly Protestants. So, as a reaction, as a response to Ferdinand II's action, the defenestation of Prague happened. And as you can see sa illustration, obviously, kaning mga tao kay ilang gipang tugpo ang mga kaning laki sa out of the window sa Prague Castle. And the defenestation of Prague was a fancy term for throwing somebody out of the window. So, Ferdinand II, so naka-receive siya mga violent reactions from the Protestants, and Ferdinand II sent some messengers or representatives to talk with the Bohemian Protestants, kanang hoping they would settle things down, but the Bohemian Protestants can't take him anymore. So when he sent these men to talk, they literally threw these men out of the window and they fell 70 feet. So makita ninyo sa Prague Castle. And luckily, they survived. However, there were some compelling views about this. Like, ang mga Catholics believe that... Oh, wait. Hello?
Wait. Just continue. Kay nag-message ra ko musig masaak sila sa Bohemia.
Sige. So there were compelling views about this. Ang mga Catholics believe nga, since nakasurvive kaning mga tauha, they believe that it was some kind of divine miracle. However, sa mga Protestants, they were like, wala yung ana. They were just like, they were lucky enough to land in a pile of manure. So, upon knowing nga, gipang labay iyahang mga men, Ferdinand II decided to face and fight sa mga Bohemians, and this is what we call the Bohemian Revolt. And sa Bohemian Revolt, kaning sa Battle of White Mountain, it was a first major victory of the Roman Catholic Habsburgs over the Protestant Union. And the defenestation of Prague, if you can remember, it marked the beginning of the 30 Years' War. Moving on to the second phase, which is the Danish phase. So Denmark, they had a Protestant or Lutheran ruler. And since naka-attain na sila sa victory, ang Catholic naka-attain na sa victory during the Bohemian phase, the fight continued in the West. And naka-hearing si Christian IV, King of Denmark, nga he decided to invade the Holy Roman Empire and help the fellow Protestants. So Denmark Norway's King Christian IV threw his support behind the Protestant states. And yeah, he invaded, but there's this guy named Wallenstein. He was a Bohemian military leader, but he works under Ferdinand II and the Habsburgs. He was able to send the Protestants back to Denmark, and that marked the second victory of the Catholics. So for the Swedish and French phase, Mr. Ligaspino will discuss it.
Okay. Madunggan na ba ko?
Dongga na
Yes.
po.
Okay.
Yes, Billy. You're audible, Billy.
Okay. So, war brings death and destruction to everyone who is involved, from the soldiers, from the sailors and merchants. Nevertheless, it is the civilian population that suffers the most. This is very true in the 30 Years' War. Um, in 1630, the Lutheran king of Sweden, Gustavus Adolphus, took the side of the northern Protestant and joined the fight with its army to help push the Catholic forces back and regain much of the lost territory lost by the Protestant Union. During the campaign, Sweden managed to conquer half of the imperial kingdoms, numerous victories giving the Protestant major advantage during the war. The Swedish intervention in the 30 Years' War was recognized as a major turning point of the war, often considered to be an independent conflict. Kay kanang ang tumong ni Gustavo is that he's very ambitious in kuan kanang gaining territory and financial advantage. Okay, so both France and the Dutch were funding Swedish forces. Can we have the next slide though? Okay, now we're talking the Battle of Britain Field. It was the first major Protestant victory of the 30 Years' War, in which the army of the Roman Catholic Emperor Ferdinand II and the Catholic League under Johann and Tilly was destroyed by the Swedish Saxon army under the King Gustavo of Sweden. The battle marked the emergence of Sweden as a great power and the triumph of the new Swedish flexible linear tactics over the old massive infantry formation that had long dominated European warfare. The King Gustavo was also known as the father of the modern warfare. While on the other side, the Battle of Britain Field was the first major Catholic defeat of the 30 Years' War. The winning general, King Gustavus Adolphus of Sweden, showed exceptional skills as a commander. His victory boosted Protestant hopes, which had been dashed by the loss of the Battle of Magdeburg or the destruction of the Protestant city in 1631 by the Imperial Army or the forces of the Catholic League. Almost 7,600 Imperial soldiers were killed and a further 6,000 were captured. The Catholic army had been utterly annihilated by the Swedish army and their Saxon allies, since Swedish and Saxon were allied, and had to be completely rebuilt from scratch. While the victory convinced many wavering Protestant princes to join the victors, so ang mga princes ni join sila sa Swedish kay kanang nakadaog man sila sa sa Catholic League. And that's a very turning point sa war. Okay, after sa war of the Battle of Britain Field, namatay si Commander Tilly, and after kay kanang um nisunod ang the Battle of Lutzen, which happened in 1632, which unfortunately namatay si King Gustavo of Sweden. His death was a great loss to the Lutheran side, resulting in large parts of Germany and other countries which had been conquered for Lutheranism to be reconquered again for the Catholic. So pagkamatay ni Gustavo, murag nahugno ang Swedes forces, and then nabalik ra gihapon sa Catholic ang ilang pang conquer sa Lutheran. So after kay on by the spring of 1635, tanan Swedes resistance kay sa south kay gipahawa nila, so naundang, and then na nahimo ang Peace of Prague. Pero dili gana ng France kay kanang naay what was that? There was terms nga kwan tanan German soldiers kay mahimo siyang one union army for the Roman Empire, which is di ganahan ang France, and mausad ng rason nga nung ilang gisuportahan ang Swedes, ilang gi tagag funds. So France enters the war. So that's the start of the French phase, 1635, 1648. Now a question arises, nganong ang France, which is a Catholic country, helping the Protestant Swedes? It's because the religious basis of the war kay nagkaanam-anam siya. So from the very point, from the religious conflict, nahimo siya more in less prevalent na siya to more in politics. So France, though a Roman Catholic, was actually a rival of the Holy Roman Empire and Spain because they considered Habsburg way too powerful since they hold a number of territories on France's border. So that's the very reason what pushed France to join and support Sweden is all about the balance of power since daghan na kayo territory ng Habsburg murag they're almost impenetrable murag like una kayo knowing France was surrounded by the Habsburg since naman gid sila sa tunga. So the only key to bring down the Holy Roman Empire is to work with the Swedes. So after pagkamatay ni Gustavo, Sweden decided to wala na kayo sila ni like nanguna in terms of military warfare siege. So ganahan sila mo take part sa war but in the internal role na lang. So Sweden allied with France. Sweden handles the budget while France handles the military operation. So the two major powers going full force against a common enemy, which is the Holy Roman Empire. As brutal as the fighting was in the 30 Years' War, hundreds of thousands died as a result of famine caused by conflict as well. Since ipangransak nila tanan almost tanan town kay ang uban wala say ikabayad ang mga general wala na ikabayad silang soldiers and ang soldiers mo kuan sila mo revolt pud sila mangransak pud sila na mga private militia mga farmers kay gusto pud sila manimaus nahimo silang imbis from farmers they became private militia nang ransak sa glying farm and town. So it was complete devastating. Violence was everywhere. Historians also believe that the first European witch hunts began during the war, as a suspicious populace attributed the suffering throughout the Europe at the time of the spiritual causes. So, almost 66% of their population, and there's more people who died in the 30 Years' War than the American Civil War and the Napoleonic Wars combined. Nga naka-worst ang death counts for 30 Years' War. So, after 30 years of fighting, the results are indecisive. Wala gi nakadaog. So, in 1648, the Peace of Westphalia was signed with the following terms. So, it weakens the Holy Roman Empire, stripping their control over the prince and princess, and completely destroying the idea of Holy Roman Empire and any kind of actual empire, and return to the rulers of the imperial states. So, ang power sa emperor ilang strips ang gihatag nila bali ang uban nahimo ng autonomous na sila power to actually govern their own area, wala sila under sa emperor. General recognition of the exclusive sovereignty of each party over its lands, people, etc., and multiple territorial adjustments brought by the peace settlements. So, the legacy of 30 Years' War is that the war impacted society in profound ways. It weakened the concept of the divine rights of kings, which was the belief that all monarchs had been put into power by the will of God, and um, and were not subject to earthly power. So, and yeah, that's the 30 Years War. Thank you so much for listening. Can we have Big No for addition?
Okay, so thank you for that, Billy. No, it is very informative, and you guys give the report crisp, clean, and very neat.
So to
Yes,
add,
Big.
to
If you have
summarize,
something to add,
oh,
go ahead.
kamera. To summarize the entire 30 Years War, it was it was the last major religious war in Europe. So the 30 Years War was basically a direct result of the Reformation, which originated as a fight between the Protestants and the Catholics and eventually evolved into a highly political conflict. So sa Peace of Westphalia, it ended the violence accompanying the Protestant revolutions. So that's all.
Right. So for the benefit of everybody, since the reporters talks about Bohemia, Swedish, Danish, and French, of course you know where is France located. When we talk about Bohemia, it's the modern day Czech Republic. Manahan pa mo sa panahon sa USSR, it was called the Czechoslovakia, no? So it was now the Czech Republic, and we talk about Saxony, that is Germany. Okay, it's part of the Germany, because Germany also is part of the Habsburg
Ally.
clan. Anyways, uh, we're not going to entertain question right now to the reporters, because this 30 years war is connected to the report of Golani, which ended the 30 years war. So right after the report of Golani, we're going to entertain questions, because questions will raise from this will be answered in the group of Golani, and also vis-a-vis magtinabangay na lang mo bigno ha ini if ever there are questions to be raised after the report of Golani. Okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, and we have now the group of Golani, the Treaty of Westphalia. Golani?
Yes sir, nakang ang PPT nakang kuan pasikaran. Bro,